This video contains massive spoilers for In Golden Flame. If you're planning on playing in this adventure, do not watch any further. Mission 2. Working Holiday. Briefing. Jerry has asked the PCs to subcontract for Rita, who wants them to look into a possible plot against the board. They will need to investigate leads, uncover clues, and neutralize threats. They'll also need to act without drawing too much attention to themselves. Goal: ensure the security of the icebreaker Borealis, and end any potential threats to its stability. Stakes: if the icebreaker Borealis is no longer able to operate, the system's main source of external revenue will be gone. More immediately, for the PCs, the gate's best customer will be gone. Reward: Rita has the resources and contacts to enable the PCs to advance to license level 2, possibly allowing them to get their hands on a new frame. Reserves: you can bring anything you were able to acquire during the last chapter with you, and Rita might be willing to expense a few additional supplies throughout the mission. Clocks: check the progress of the station's stability clock. The players won't need to worry about it right now. With the printer fixed, Hell's Gate will keep page the success of the mission, however, will have a profound impact not just on Hell's Gate, but potentially the entire system. Establish a clock called Cult Influence with no segments ticked. Don't let the players see it yet. The Cult Influence clock always has as many total segments as there are unticked segments on the station stability clock. If a plot development causes segments to be ticked on the station's stability clock, remove that many segments from Cult Influence clock, whether or not they're ticked. The Sleeping Angel. To bring the death and rebirth of the universe, Feather must grow stronger. She flew inside one of Kalevala's minor moons, Cantel, and turned it into an egg. When it cracks, a new Feather will emerge, ready for the next stage of her plan. This process will require a vast infusion of energy to complete. Before going into hibernation, Feather instructed Ignatius Aurum to recover the tachyon and bring its spinal weapon online for this purpose. However, with the tachyon destroyed, Ignatius has been forced to find a different solution. The only other thing nearby that can provide the required amount of energy is the Borealis old mining laser. Unfortunately, it's been disassembled for decades. No matter, the Calliope sect will rebuild it, seize control of the station, and fire it at Cantel. They have assembled 2 teams for this endeavor. Mithryl team has been tasked with maintaining the fire gate that allows personnel and equipment to be covertly moved onto the icebreaker. Meanwhile, Baylor team has been tasked with rebuilding the laser. The Inner Cult have another advantage on the icebreaker. They've turned a member of the board. Evelina Bondarchuk, owner and proprietor of the Gift Bronze Resort and Casino. Once the cult has finished with the laser, they'll have no further need for the icebreaker. Evelina plans to use the chaos sown by their actions to oust Rita and seize control of the entire station for herself. Mission structure. This mission is more free-form than the previous one, allowing the PCs to investigate leads as they see fit. Each lead fits into one of 2 investigations, which the PCs may progress through as they see fit. At the climax of each of the 2 investigations, they will discover something that demands they get into their mechs and take action, leading to a combat sequence. They can investigate the murdered census official, the trash data center, and the power fluctuations in the Zhengyi Sao district in Beat 10. The Gate of Mithryl, page 127. They can investigate the mysterious reactor repairs, the kidnapped Harrison Armory scientist, and the printer malfunctions in Beat 11, the Eye of Balor, page 133. The PCs can uncover as much as they like in either investigation. But once they get into their mechs and fight, they have to put the other investigation aside until the fighting is done. The PCs potentially have access to multiple full repairs this mission, one at the end of each investigation. Combats in this mission are slightly more difficult to reflect the fact that PCs might only have to fight 2 battles before getting all their resources back. The 2 fights in Beat 10, the Gate of Mithryl, happen back to back, with no time for a rest. Once the PCs have finished both investigations, depending on how well they performed, the remaining hostiles will either go to ground or begin a full-blown assault on the station, as detailed in Beat 12, Spreading Fire, page 141. Running an investigation. Each playgroup is different. Some Lancer playgroups may be delighted with the idea of chasing a series of clues, slowly piecing them together and reaching a conclusion. Others will be less enthused and just want to get to the bit where the mechs punch each other, and that's entirely valid. Remember that, as the GM, you control the information your players have access to. Players will only know the things you tell them, so things that seem obvious to you, who already knows all the answers, will not necessarily be obvious to them. It's generally wise to err on the side of giving players too much information, rather than too little. If you think the players will simply want to be told what their PCs discover, and how the clues fit together as they proceed with an investigation, leading up to the combat sequence at the end of a branch, that's perfectly fine. If either the PCs or the players are running into trouble or seem stuck, remember that they aren't the only people investigating the icebreaker's problems. Board members and their hirelings want to restore stability and confidence, so the money keeps flowing, while individual citizens want to help out their communities. They'll both be happy to drop the PCs a hint. When you want to leave clues for the PCs, remember that the best way to make clues is to work backwards, starting at the conclusion. Something was done. A cult has built a teleportation gate, for instance, and this left traces and had consequences. The teleportation gate draws a lot of power, and so is causing power disruptions. The people the gate is bringing in are arousing suspicion, so investigators must be silenced, and so forth. Beat 10. The Gate of Mithryl. To allow clandestine movement of personnel and equipment, the Inner Cult's Mithryl team has erected a fire gate underneath the Sao district. They would have preferred a less trafficked part of the station, but it was the only place with the correct combination of power supply, abandoned infrastructure, and freight tunnel access. Mithryl team and its fire gate has been integral to the plan. Almost all the mechs the cult has on the icebreaker came through the gate, as did a majority of the personnel and equipment. In preparation for seizing control of the icebreaker, Mithryl team has been stepping up its activities. But some people are paying attention. Tarbin McKaylee noticed a whole lot of people who weren't on the previous census, but whose arrival on the station wasn't on any harbor register. Himself a member of the Faith of the One, he had the terrible misfortune to confide his concerns in a priest who happened to be a member of the Inner Cult. This left Mithryl team with a problem. They swiftly murdered Tarbin and then destroyed the data center his notes were backed up in. But this tipped their hand slightly. They might have thwarted the investigation. But now the icebreaker definitely knows something's up. They'd begun ramping up their use of the fire gate to summon further reinforcements. This itself caused even more problems. The fire gate consumes an immense amount of power, and it's causing disturbances in the district's electrical grid. Additionally, the gate is an artificial gravity well and has begun to generate seismic activity, causing the wiggle to manifest in a part of the station it shouldn't. Freight lines that should be abandoned are in use. People are aware something strange is going on. Mithryl team is perilously close to discovery, but they don't need to hide forever, just long enough to get the job done. The murdered census taker. Officer Lamariano can give the PCs all the information the station's security forces have. She can even take them to the scene of the crime, which can be reconstructed for their convenience via holoprojection. Tarbin McKaylee was murdered in his home a couple of hours after returning from a visit to the Sao district, where he seems to have been searching for something. Security cameras in his apartment complex have no footage from the time of the murder. There were no signs of a struggle or forced entry. The apartment is a Spartan affair, with very little in the way of personal possessions. The only notable element is a shrine of the one plumed in golden flame. The cause of death was a single shot to the back of the head, piercing the brainstem. Loss of consciousness and death would have been nearly instantaneous. That's notable in itself. It's a difficult shot to pull off. Center of mass would have been far easier and likely just as lethal. The fact that it was made while the victim's back was turned suggests he either wasn't aware of the murderer's presence or trusted them enough to turn his back on them. A thorough search of the shrine will reveal a hidden data storage device, upon which Tarbin recorded a copy of his notes. He noted a large and rather sudden increase in unregistered visitors, people who aren't on the station's visitors database, and believed that a human trafficking operation of some kind was operating out of the Zhengyi Sao district. He was attempting to narrow down where, but began to suspect that he was being followed. Colleagues described Tarbin as quiet, efficient, and withdrawn. With few friends, he was a great worker, but not a particularly good co-worker. He'd get it into his head to do something, and then go off and do it, sometimes disappearing for days. The only person he really interacted with was a recent hire, Gokul Kwonju, whom he was training. Gokul Kwonju remarks that even he didn't get a very good idea of who Tarbin was, but he can tell the PCs that before his death, he kept mentioning having to investigate matters in the Zhengyi Sao district. Tarbin was also a devout member of the Faith of the One, which was just about the only non-work subject he was willing to discuss with Gokul. The trashed data center. Officer Zarek is stumped. The data center has very little in the way of direct clues. It was attacked by a small team of professionals who arrived, took the staff hostage, and trashed the place in a matter of minutes. They then escaped into the freight tunnels, fleeing into sections where sensor coverage is patchy or absent. The data center would have had an off-site copy of Tarbin's notes, along with a lot of civic management data. The facility was in the middle of a weekly backup when the attack hit. All the equipment has already been replaced, but an entire week of data was irretrievably lost. Zhengyi Sao District. The Zhengyi Sao district is an upmarket area of the Star Strip, containing a number of high-profile shopping malls, hotels, and casinos. It contains some of the station's most popular gambling halls, and it's always busy. Even for the icebreaker, on any given day, there are more people in Zhengyi Sao than in any other district other than the Gladiators' Draw and Quarter. Right now, though, it's going through some problems. Whenever the PCs visit it, there always seems to be a team of wrenchies trying to fix something. If the PCs can get them talking, they'll explain that the entire sector's been suffering a rash of blackouts, brownouts, and tripped breakers for weeks now, and nobody can seem to work out a permanent fix. Every board member in the district is blaming the others, but the wrenchies think differently. They're positive there's something in the district drawing a huge amount of electricity, but they can't work out what or where it is. They'd probably be able to get on top of things if this part of the station wasn't experiencing a really bad case of the wiggle. Seismic disturbances and strain on the district's systems are terrifying visitors and making it difficult to get repair work done on anything else. But this shouldn't be happening. The board members who run the Zhengyi Sao district paid for the very best in anchoring. The wiggle shouldn't be present in the district at all, let alone this severely. There's also rumors all over the station about activity on freight lines that should be abandoned, and they grow more common the closer one gets to this district. The alarm system. The station's emergency alert system keeps sounding a general alarm at the exact same time every single day, terrifying its guests and annoying its residents. Rita's considering disconnecting the whole thing until the cause can be definitively located. This is a flagrant violation of safety standards, but enough members of the board are getting mad about lines on graphs going down that Rita has to do something. Following up, At the end of the investigation, the PCs will eventually discover the location of Mithryl team's hideout, a large, abandoned transit depot at the center of a tangle of freight tunnels beneath the Zhangyi-Sao district. The place is a hive of activity, with freight trains coming and going at all hours. Something inside the facility is drawing an immense amount of power, although the PCs won't be able to see what it is until they breach it. What their sensors can tell them, however, is that every time it activates, it generates an intense gravitational signature. This must be the source of the odd seismic activity in the district. The PCs will have to call Rita to get her to authorize this operation. But that isn't a problem. The moment they explain the situation, she'll rubber stamp it. She can't authorize any deployment of station security forces without consulting the board, but she can have the PC's mechs delivered to them within the hour. Rita also assigns some technicians to assist the PCs, but they quickly report that the depot's systems have been cut off from the station's network and must be accessed up close. They'll need to use the PC's mechs as broadcast relays to hack into local systems and force the doors open. Mithryl team has prepared contingency plans for discovery, but the PCs can catch them by surprise if they act now. Once the fighting begins, the PCs must see it through to its conclusion. Retreating will give the hostiles time to fortify and prepare for a siege. Make sure the PCs know that they will not be able to either rest until the assault is over. Combat. Thermopylae. Sitrep. Gauntlet. Enemy forces. For 3 PCs. 1 elite barricade with extradite and seismic repulsor. 1 bastion. 1 veteran engineer with arsenal, mobile turrets, and feigned death. For 4 PCs, plus 1 spacer operator with fade generator and gravity rifle. For 5 PCs, plus 1 assault with auto-targeting. Reinforcements. For 3 PCs, 1 exotic commander priest with priest, empowered shield, commander, press on, and exotic, blink space carver. For 4 to 5 PCs plus 1 sniper with dead metal rounds. Details. The Gauntlet Sitrep requires the PCs to push through enemy resistance and secure a location, in this case, the bulkhead doors leading further into the depot. They will have to deal with opponents like the barricade, which can slow its targets or flash print blocks of cover that obstruct movement, and the operator, a highly mobile combat mech that can teleport. This fight occurs in the outer hall of an abandoned train depot. At one side, there sits a gate further into the facility, currently sealed. On the other side is another gate from which several train lines emerge, routing into loading bays. The PCs deploy from this gate. Cover will consist of abandoned trains, old cargo containers, and loading cranes. An adjacent character can reactivate a crane's autoloader mode as a quick action. Thereafter, any hostile character that ends their turn adjacent to the crane must make a hull check or become immobilized. They can repeat the check as a quick action, clearing immobilized on a success. Outcome. PC defeat. If the PCs are defeated or forced to retreat before they reach the fire gate, this branch of their investigation is over. Realizing they've been discovered, the Mithryl team goes into overdrive, crippling the district as they run the fire gate constantly. If the PCs haven't done Beat 11, Eye of Baylor, page 133, they can attempt it, but Baylor team will be on high alert. If they have, go to Beat 12, Spreading Fire, page 141, PC Victory. If the PCs are successful, they force the doors open. The situation evolves rapidly. As the doors rattle open, you witness something extraordinary. 4 curved pylons cradle a sphere of bent space, lensing light around itself like a black hole. But instead of darkness, it shines with a magnificent orange firelight, and at its center you see glimpses of some distant place. The depot's loudspeaker system spits out a whining burst of feedback, and then desperate requests in a panicked voice. They're through the doors. They cut down our entire defense force. They're at the fire gate. We need reinforcements. Send backup. Send the biggest thing you have. There's a brief, terrible pause. Wait, no, not that big. That's two. The sphere contorts violently, bursting from the containment of its pylons, rushing towards you. Your mech systems are overwhelmed by a torrent of paradoxical readings, and then nothing. The PCs have 2 rounds in which to take any actions they deem necessary to prepare. Using the STABILIZE action twice is a good choice, but they don't have enough time to take a rest. Combat anti-capital begins immediately. Any damage, heat, or unloaded weapons they didn't deal with stay with them. Combat anti-capital. Sitrep, NA. Enemy forces. For 3 PCs, 1 Sunbird 1, Ultraship Rainmaker with Rainmaker, Hades missiles and Ultra, Argus armor or evasive, and Wolfhound missiles. 1 Elite Hornet with Adapt/Evade/Disengage. For 4 PCs, plus 1 Veteran Spacer Sentinel with Acrobat and Wrathlock. Plus 1 Spacer Cataphract with Electrified Bola. For 5 PCs, plus 1 Spacer Operator with Gravity Rifle and Skirmisher. When your sensor feeds return, there is no portal. There is no transit depot. There is no ceiling or floor. Your mech tumbles in microgravity as something gigantic zips past in your peripheral vision. It's a support strut, one of many anchoring the vast bulk of the Borealis to the city below. You're floating between the Borealis and the sprawl. Far below, you can see smoke and debris rising from a small circular void in the Xingyi-Sayo district. A void you feel fairly certain used to contain the transit depot you occupied a few moments ago. Your tacticals scream a warning at you. Hostile targeting lock. Something gigantic, twirling deftly between the struts. Silhouette analysis returns a match. Valencia Combat Solutions Sentinella-class missile corvette. Those are usually deployed against capital ships. That seems real bad. Details. This desperate struggle takes place in the zero-gravity space between the sprawl and the hull of the Borealis. The battle space consists of floating islands of debris large enough for a few mechs to stand on, separated by small gaps, 1 to 3 spaces wide. Mechs can move normally on the islands, but become slowed in open space if they don't have a flight system. At the start of the first round, draw a vertical line 3 spaces wide at the left side of the battlefield. Each round, move it 3 spaces to the right. This is the trajectory of one of the support struts anchoring the Borealis to the sprawl. Fortunately for the station's populace, these struts are indestructible. Unfortunately for the combatants, they are not. Any character inside the marked area at the end of the round takes 8 IEP and gets pushed outside the area by the most direct route possible. Objects, deployables, drones, or cover smaller than size 5 are instantly obliterated, as are spaces of floating island in the path of the strut. Sunbird 1 is an Ultra, the first the PCs will have fought. ULTRAS are extremely dangerous enemies with very powerful abilities and systems. The Argus armor trait makes Sunbird 1 very resilient at the start of the fight. Players will have to chew through 20 HP with Sunbird 1, ignoring the first 6 damage of most of their attacks. It's probably best to tell them the full text of the trait, even if they don't scan. At the very least, make sure they know the armor can be stripped away by overheating, and that every player mech can invade. Players with AP weapons, high damage attacks, or the ability to inflict shredded have an opportunity to shine here. All this said, if you think this will be too much trouble, give Sunbird 1 the evasive trait instead. The Wolfhound missile is a weapon designed for use against capital ships, and deals a terrifying amount of damage to mechs. But it's a telegraphed attack that takes a long time to reach its target. It can also be turned against Sunbird 1 quite easily, if the PCs have a way to force it or the missile to move. You can drop a hint by reminding players that the Wolfhound missile is a drone, and drones are characters. The Hornet is a nimble, evasive mech that can easily inflict impaired and jammed. If players are having trouble hitting it, remind them about reliable damage, or mention that smart weapons roll against an enemy's E-defense, rather than their evasion. Outcome: PC defeat. If the PCs are defeated during this encounter, it isn't a terrible blow. The Firegate was already destroyed by the ingress of the gunship and its support team, so the cult can't bring in any more reinforcements. However, if the PCs haven't completed Beat 11, Eye of Balor, page 133, yet the cult still have either the focal array, Dr. Nyambo's, or both. They accelerate their plans with the assistance of any forces the PCs didn't destroy, remaining on high alert. If Sunbird 1 survives the encounter, it boosts out of range of the station and engages a near-light bolt to an unknown destination. PC victory. If the PCs are victorious, they've not only destroyed the Firegate, but also wrecked an expensive and dangerous piece of the cult's arsenal. This convinces Rita that they're worth the money she's paying them, not to mention the hell she's going through justifying the absolute chaos the Corvette caused to the board. Moving on. If this is the first investigation the PCs have completed, they have time for a full repair, after which you should move to Beat 11, Eye of Balor, page 133, otherwise, consult Beat 12, Spreading Fire, page 141. Beat 11. The Eye of Balor. To crack open Cantel, the inner cult needs the Borealis' powerful mining laser. Unfortunately for them, its focal array was disassembled decades ago, and even if it were intact, the ship's reactors no longer provide enough power to fire it. But the inner cult is resourceful and has made great strides towards solving both problems. They have designated the group responsible for this task Balor team. Using forged credentials, they secured the opportunity to do repair work on the Borealis reactor array. They needed a specialist, Dr. Rosebottle, for this work, bringing her in from another system through Mithryl team's Firegate, and then exfiltrating her again once her work was done. The use of non-union labor had the additional side benefit of angering Fayad Harb, who now refuses to talk to Rita. Meanwhile, they've also been assembling a new focal array. This required its original blueprint, which they had to steal from the station's engineering department. It also needed very specific components, and so, in order to disguise their plan, they've been hacking into various businesses and spamming printers across the station with junk requests to bury their signal in noise. Finally, they scouted an abandoned industrial facility that they could use to assemble the focal array. In a stroke of luck, Dr. Genevieve Nyambos, a purview scientist with expertise in lasers, happened to be visiting the station. Balor team collaborated with Evelina Bondarchuk to kidnap her, so as to have someone capable of checking their work. They're also holding on to her in case they need help configuring it once it's installed. The unauthorized repairs. If the PCs talk to Fayad Harb, he's likely to interpret them as spies or union busters at first. He's still furious, but he's also painted himself into a corner. He's come to realize Rita wouldn't pull this kind of anti-union stunt on him, but he's gotten the union so riled up that he can't back down now, or he'll lose face. To maintain credibility, he needs the PCs to convince Rita to hand him some sort of token victory. If the PCs can swing this, or find some other way to calm things down, he'll explain that quite apart from the labor issues, he's baffled why anyone would go to that level of effort to repair the reactors. The icebreaker already has more than enough district local power plants and redundant electrical infrastructure to supply nearly double its current demand. The reactors on the Borealis are incredibly inefficient if they're run below a certain level, and there's nothing on the station that could consume even a fraction of their peak output. They were designed to power an asteroid-cracking mining laser that was disassembled for parts decades ago. If the PCs investigate the faith of the One, they protest their innocence. They simply received a work order from the station authority, validated the credentials, and did the job that was asked of them. It's not their fault the credentials were forged or that the job got tangled up in a labor dispute. They'll gladly turn over the relevant files to the PCs, which will validate their account. There's one small oddity: Dr. Rosebottle, the engineer and reactor specialist who oversaw the operation. She arrived without warning and then vanished again the moment the work was done. If the PCs can strike up a conversation with members of the faith who worked on the project, they speak positively of her, calling her a genius. But a couple of them were surprised because they had thought she was in Dal, light years away. If the PCs try to contact her, she's not currently reachable. If the PCs do a bit more digging, they can find out that the faith rents warehouse space in a run-down part of the sprawl, and there's been more activity around those parts than usual. The missing scientist. If the PCs visit Sergeant Hemmingson, he's rude and unhelpful. He stonewalls, insisting that he won't discuss anything with non-armory personnel. The armory will find its own, he says, and when they do, the board will rue the day it ran such a sloppy operation. He instructs an attendant, Corporal Valentinian, to escort them out. The moment they're out of earshot of Hemmingson, Corporal Valentinian tries to pull the PCs aside to talk to them. If they consent, he assures them, the armory isn't going to take legal action, and it certainly won't boycott the station. The sergeant is just stalling for time. Dr. Nyambos's safety was his responsibility, and if the purview finds out someone outside the armory had to rescue her, Hemmingson will be in a world of hurt. On the other hand, Corporal Valentinian, page 114, first name low-key, is genuinely worried about her. If pressed, he explains he grew up around her. She used to be employed by his father. She was always nice to him, not least because he was clever enough to understand her doctorate, which studied generation of localized deformations in the topology of spacetime through photoexcitative induction of very high energy states. Basically, she made lasers so powerful they cut holes in space. Oh man, she'd get so mad whenever she heard me explaining it like that. Low-key suspects, Doctor. Nyambos's kidnapping was a professional job. Important individuals in the purview have a biolocator implant. They're picking up a weak signal, so she's still on the station, but it's not sufficient to triangulate, which means someone is jamming it. The implant also broadcasts on a second frequency, but only out to a few hundred meters. Valentinian gives the PCs both frequencies. She disappeared while at a casino she was visiting, the Gift Bronze, in the Zhengyi district. Low-key wasn't on duty that night. Hemmingson's interference, he says. Low-key can start the PCs on the trail, but he can't be seen assisting them directly. As much as Low-key dislikes Hemmingson, the guy's still his superior officer, and he can't risk another write-up for insubordination right now. If the PCs engage Low-key in conversation, he tries to avoid discussing himself, but will divulge his history, page 114, if it seems like it'll get the team to trust him. Investigating the Gift Bronze casino directly is risky, but careful or determined PCs can discover a lot of freight has been shipped between the casino and a set of warehouses owned by the Faith of the One recently. Evelina Bondarchuk also owns a theme park, Deepest Fairyland, and a shipment of generic goods was sent there from the casino on the same night that Dr. Nyambos went missing. The stolen blueprint. At some point after the PCs have started investigating the unauthorized repairs or Dr. Nyambos' kidnapping, they get a call from Riley Hyon, one of the Icebreaker's civic archivists. She informs them that her office just had an audit and discovered that their servers were accessed without authorization a few weeks ago, and blueprints for the Borealis were copied. The thing is, these weren't up-to-date blueprints. The Borealis floor plan was revised during construction after the original layout proved impractical, so the version that was stolen would be inaccurate. When asked what use the older version might have, Riley checks over both versions and then informs the PCs that the only thing she can see is that the older version also contains blueprints for the mining laser, which had already been installed by the time the newer plan was drawn up. The printer snafu. Printers across the station have been churning out a steady stream of junk requests over the past few weeks, printing all sorts of random clutter. The orders come from all over the icebreaker, with no apparent pattern in location, requester, requested object, or urgency. Attempts to filter them out have been unsuccessful. It's hard to filter legitimate requests from the fake ones, so the printers just have to keep printing. Hidden among the junk requests are the components for a new focal array. They've been delivered to a variety of locations spread across the station to avoid detection, but they all had to be assembled in one place. Piecing this together might require some serious detective work, but if the PCs have already talked to Riley Hyen, it becomes much easier. Evelina Bondarchuk. At some point after the PCs have started investigating Dr. Nyambos's disappearance, and particularly if they start investigating the Gift Bronze Casino or Deepest Fairyland, Evelina Bondarchuk will take notice, and if she even thinks the PCs might be a threat to her plans, she will do her best to get rid of them. Fortunately for them, she's limited in what she can do right now. She can't afford to tip her hand too soon. There's precedent for the board setting aside their differences to crush an overly ambitious power play, and the person behind it. Rita has actually harnessed this phenomenon a couple of times to maintain the balance of power she desires. Evelina will start with procedural obstruction. She'll call unscheduled meetings of the board and file emergency anti-espionage motions to prevent whatever kind of investigative activity the PCs are currently engaged in. She'll play on the paranoia of other board members by suggesting that if these motions aren't passed, they might be next. These motions will force Rita onto the defensive, as she'll have to find out a way to oppose them without appearing to have an ulterior motive. If politics don't work, Evelina will turn to intimidation. The PCs might return to their hotel rooms to find them ransacked, or notice shady characters watching them from across the street. Threatening notes start arriving via the Omninet or the Muse. Siren reports a technician trying to gain access to the Dragon's Tooth with a faked recording of the PCs authorizing maintenance work. If intimidation doesn't work, Evelina will risk turning to violence. She dispatches goons whose actions rapidly escalate from mere intimidating behavior to trying to rough the team up to outright abduction. This should never end up with a PC dead, but they might get into some seriously hot water. Following up. If the PCs follow the clues, they'll eventually find themselves either at Deepest Fairyland, where Dr. Nyambos is being kept, or at the Faith's rented warehouses, where the Faith was storing whatever they recently built. Not only are there a lot of mechs in both areas, they're all armed and guarding something. Meanwhile, components for the focal array have been sent to one of the few places that has the tools, equipment, and personnel to assemble high-power optics without raising suspicion, a giant open-air rave being held at the Grand Aurora Amphitheater. Rita asks the PCs to be sure of what they're doing before they engage, to be discreet and to avoid collateral damage. It would be a bad look for the Icebreakers contractors to smash up a theme park or disrupt a concert without a very good reason. The PCs can run these encounters in either order, depending on which task they handle first. The PCs will have time for a rest in between fights. Smash the system. Once they discover that someone wants to fire the mining laser, PCs might suggest cutting out the middleman and sabotaging it. This is a good idea in theory, as it would totally sink the inner cult's plan. However, there are major barriers to pulling it off. Most importantly, Rita won't authorize a deployment in the laser chamber. It's right above the forward docking bay. Mech deployment within it would be impossible to hide from the board. If the PCs try to do it anyway, they're voiding their contract, and Rita will remind them of this. If the PCs do it anyway, run a 3-way variant of combat, Thermopylae, page 129. In zero-gravity conditions with twice as many combatants, half of them being members of the station's security forces, hostile to both the PCs and the cult. The aftermath of either victory or defeat is likely to be disastrous. Combat. Send in the clowns. Sitrep, Extraction, Lancer, page 270. Objective, Dr. Nyambos, size 1/2, 6 HP, no weapons. Enemy forces. For 3 PCs, 1 elite scourer with pulse laser and supercharged, 1 veteran bastion with near threat denial system and shock armor, 1 hive, 1 mirage with manifest false idols, 1 squad. For 4 PCs, plus 1 veteran cataphract with acrobat and electrified lasso, plus 1 Ronin. For 5 PCs, plus 1 elite scourer with pulse laser and supercharged. Allied forces. For 3-5 PCs, 1 low-key, veteran mirage, size 1 with limitless metafold shove and multiplicity. Details. Dr. Nyambos is being held in one of the administrative buildings in deepest fairyland, Evelina Bondarchuk's theme park. The park operates exclusively at night, so the PCs can only attack during the day. Rita won't authorize a raid while civilians are present. There is ample size 1 and size 2 scenery all over the park that provides hard cover, but it's flimsy. Scenery has half the HP of normal cover, and any attack that misses a character in hard cover from scenery automatically hits the scenery instead. The park is also full of smoke machines, pyrotechnics, which can be activated by an adjacent character to generate a persistent F1 field of soft cover. The supports for roller coaster tracks run all across the park. Track supports are built in lines, are obstructions between 4 and 8 spaces in height, and provide soft cover to anything behind them. They have archways at key locations that let mechs up to size 2 pass through. They are also reinforced, each support having 20 HP, and are specifically designed to be climbed on by mechs, up to size 2. There's a Ferris wheel that is 5 spaces long, 1 space wide, and 5 spaces high. A mech capable of pushing a size 2 character can force it off its moorings and roll it A10 in any direction. Any character in this path must make an agility check or take I8 and be knocked prone. Characters who pass the check take half damage and aren't knocked prone. Once the Ferris wheel stops rolling, it will fall over, becoming a circular obstruction that covers a F3 area and provides soft cover to characters up to size 2. Next to the regular merry-go-round is a mech-sized turntable for the mascots to perform on. It covers a F2 area and switches all characters standing on it to the opposite side of it at the end of every turn. In this engagement, the PCs will need to focus on extracting Dr. Nyambos. Enemies will pour onto the battlefield every turn, and if the PCs try to spend all their time fighting them, they are likely to be overwhelmed. Make sure the players are aware of their objective. As one of Evelina Bondarchuk's prize properties, the park is heavily guarded. The enemy mechs in this fight are giant mascots built around combat-ready mechs. Their smiles may be painted on, but their weapons are terrifyingly real. The squad starts on the field next to Dr. Nyambos and will call in reinforcements when the PCs show up. Low-key Valentinian will turn up in the deployment zone to assist them at the start of the 3rd turn, in addition to an enemy reinforcement wave. Low-key pilots an unfamiliar size 1 Harrison armory frame that seems similar to a Mirage, but that the PCs will likely never have seen before, a Sun's Eye. If asked about it, Low-key explains that it's classified, but his father designed it. The Scourer is a dangerous enemy that prefers to target one specific PC with its thermal lance multiple turns in a row, dealing immense damage and burn due to focus down. However, it creates a lot of heat. The scourer is dressed up like a mighty dragon. It's easy to misunderstand how the scourer's cooling module works. Although it should stay still on other characters' turns, it can move on its own turn. The cataphract's job is to get close to Dr. Nyambos and stop her from moving, or to drag PCs away from her with electrified lasso. The cataphract is dressed up like a noble knight upon their mighty steed. The hive can use its razor swarms to create zones that the PCs either have to avoid or take burn moving through. The hive looks like an enchanted tree, and its drones are clouds of fairies. The Ronin is a villainous, masked swordsman, and the Mirage is a cunning and devious master of illusions. The Bastion is dressed up like a troll, carrying half a bridge. It has a hardwired proximity system that causes it to yell riddles at any character who approaches within Atwu. Its pilot doesn't know how to turn it off. Outcome: PC defeat. If the PCs cannot extract Dr. Nyambos by the end of the 10th round, they are overwhelmed and captured if they're still on the field. They are handed over to Balor team by park security and held prisoner for a few hours until the armory team rescues all of them. The PCs are safe, but by this time Balor team has moved the focal array outside the station for safekeeping. The team's leads have gone cold. They can investigate Beat 10, the Gate of Micklin, page 127 if it remains open, although Micklin team will be on high alert. If they already finished it, move to Beat 12, Spreading Fire, page 141 instead. Worse, the team's mechs have been lost, so they'll need Rita to reprint them as part of a full repair. She won't be impressed. If the PCs are forced to retreat, Baylor team moves Dr. Nyambos, and they won't be able to try another rescue at this time. They may still look for the focal array. If Dr. Nyambos is killed, the hostiles begin to peel off, uninterested in fighting over a corpse. Low-key is heartbroken. If the team were directly responsible for her death, he develops a vendetta against them. PC victory. If the PCs rescue Dr. Nyambos, she's very grateful and explains that her captors had her working on some kind of capital-scale laser weapon. If the PCs aren't already aware of it, she tells them the location of the storage unit that the focal array is being kept in. Her captors talked a little bit too much around her. Low-key is highly grateful to the team for helping rescue his friend. Unfortunately, he can't assist them any further right now. He's already going to catch absolute hell from Hemmingson for this stunt. Dr. Nyambos. If the PCs successfully rescue Dr. Nyambos, or at least get thrown in a cell with her, she can fill them in on her captors and what they've been forcing her to do. They're trying to reactivate the Borealis mining laser, but it needs a new focal array. They handled the assembly themselves, but they needed me to check that it could handle the extreme power levels they'd be running it at. I had to do what they said. One of them knew enough that I couldn't fake it. I was worried enough for myself, but they said if I didn't cooperate, they'd go after my protection team as well. I've had enough people suffer on my behalf already. She can answer more specific questions if the PCs ask. Her CONDITION. Don't worry, I'm fine. I was kidnapped, but apart from the threats, they treated me well enough. To be quite honest with you, they had more respect for the Utopian Pillars than my previous employer. Her captors. They're part of some local religion, the faith of the one plumed in golden flame. Some sort of church that worships the apocalypse. Not just that, though. I get the feeling that the rest of the faith doesn't know about these people. They're secretive. The focal array. It would be completely impractical to build a single lacing medium to deliver the sort of power a mining laser needs. Instead, they use massive banks of fiber lasers that are combined by a focal array. Building it to the original spec wasn't the issue. What they needed my help with was modifying it. They want to run it at a much, much higher output than it was intended for. I did what I could, but I told them straight, Whatever threats they made, I couldn't make it survive more than one firing. But that was all right, they told me. Once was all they needed. The target. I don't think they wanted to tell me, but I said I needed to know what they'd be firing at, or I couldn't calibrate the array properly. It wasn't even a lie, really. The target is Cantel, a tiny minor moon just outside Kalevala's ring system. It'll pass almost straight into the firing solution of the laser in a few days. I don't know why, but they want to shatter it. Will it work? It might. Weiß on might. The simulations looked good enough, but it was never supposed to be used at power levels as high as they want to run it. Even if they succeed, they'll melt everything in the firing chamber and burn out half the ship's systems. I had to jury-rig in some cooling systems from a previous project I worked on, just to give it a chance. Her past. I used to work for a brilliant and terrible man. That's all I wish to say. The Firegate. Dr. Nyambos listens to the PC's account of the Firegate, her frown growing steadily more severe. A blink tunneling device that's stable across interstellar distances, compressed to mech scale? The man I used to work for would kill to get his hands on something like that. And I mean that literally. The stakes? Well, that entirely depends on why they want to shatter Cantel. I never got that out of them. But I can say for sure this station won't enjoy it. So much of the old vessel has been cannibalized. It doesn't have even close to enough heat management left to handle the sort of output this will produce. And it gets worse. Even with the alignment set to occur in a few days, they'll have to rotate the entire station by about 3 degrees, firing the ship's attitude control thrusters with an entire city clamped to it. What is that you call it? The Wiggle? It will be nothing compared to this. And it's not exactly like this station's owners are going to just let them walk in and do this. You've already seen. These people have their own private army. There'll be blood in the streets. Following up. If the PCs haven't located the focal array yet, Dr. Nyambos tells them approximately where to find it.